Hello again, I'm Scott Bradford, Choral Education Director for ISSMA, and you've already previewed our mock auditions and seen some of the training, and we want to thank you. We know it's a lot. It's been a lot of customization, it's been a lot of time, and it's going to be a lot of time, but the enjoyment's going to be when you see those videos and you see it's all worth it. So thank you as we get started. In the Saturday auditions, this video is going to replace the judge briefing. We're going to give you this video so that you have the opportunity to go at your pace the whole day and that you don't have to wait on us explaining every detail. Thanks again. I have 89 judges, so if you can, I'm going to be a little selfish. Would you just email me both concerns, informations, all the penalties and things like that during the day of the event? What I'm afraid is on text they'll get lost, so if you could email me. You've also received an email from us, including this video link, that has a pay voucher. Those pay vouchers, if you would, send them to a Brian, because the other, if you will, catch-22 is I'm afraid I'll lose it in all the emails. If you forget, I'll try to do my best to get you paid. Going on. If we're able to do these virtual events because we have an emergency situation with copyright, the publishers have given us a little leniency and allowed us in a private platform to display music and videos. And that's why we're able to do this. So it's hopefully a very limited time frame and we'll be back to normal. All right, to follow along today, you may want to get out your adjudication sheets and your general judge instructions that were sent in the previous emails. That might help you. I'm going to be reading through some of those things, starting with the process. Okay, so this is a non-competitive event or assessment where you're going to give ratings and comments. Written commentary only. We will use the group classifications, which for those of you that judge fall assessments, that's different. You'll see those below the videos, but you also have a classification sheet that we emailed you where you can check and get more detail. Underneath the videos, you'll get information of group level, name, composer, and all of the details of the performance, but those are questions that the students put in. So the accuracy could be questionable. We hope that it's correct. In that, with the group level, that's where you're going to have to adjust your tolerance and be very aware of where you are with the rubric and considerations there. Underneath the video, you'll also see performance tiles. Those performance tiles will have the name, the school, and the group level as well. It will not have Group 1 listings. Group 1 will be using Group 1 literature, and it will be used, and they must perform off the list, and we'll get to that a little later. But there are no restrictions or expectations for other literature within the group levels, the type or genre of music, or the group levels associations. There will be certain penalties and fractions, also a difference between the fall assessments. You'll see that in the mock auditions, as well as your real auditions, that we have the ability to move that and indicate penalties and fractions. Now, we hope that there are 0, but if there are, we'll talk about that and how you do those again. It is possible that some auditions and ensembles may be missing members. In that case, there are rules that cover that as well, including comment only, that we'll talk about in detail when we get to ensemble members later on. Soloists may perform with or without accompaniment. Now, a lot of you all didn't realize that because so often we as vocal people believe that the accompaniment really is a great pairing in the audition. So if they don't have accompaniment, there's no penalty. If they do have accompaniment, it's always piano or piano recordings only. All right. The adjudication process. We're going to be doing all aspects of the process, including watching the categories, the descriptors, making your comments in the middle with measure numbers and references, as well as special remarks at the end. We ask that you make sure that each point has occurred in every category. If you don't fill out the category, a point for every category, that will affect the total points and ultimately the rating. Let me show you on the video here on the screen. You saw Holly through some of the mock auditions, and many of you have used this to practice. With the drop down, we have our scoring rubric, depending on what you choose. If I change that to 1.5, I can type in more details. Because in these remarks area, using the categories and descriptors, I ask that you make a little better use, such as this. Give the reason for that. Even assigning a 1 and saying perfect is not a great description because the students are waiting for feedback for improvement. So see what you can do to go beyond that. Reference measure numbers whenever possible. okay? And judge the actual student performance only. You're going to see that the commentation or the comments or evaluation may have some technical problems. They may be wearing masks. There's all types of video issues. If you saw Holly's, there was an introduction where she and, I assume, a parent were conversing back and forth prior to the performance. Judge from the first music note to the last music note. We ask you to ignore the audio problems, showing of details, and even the introduction. You're going to be using all 3 stages of impression, analysis, and comparison. Now, impression, sometimes you get a great impression and sometimes a poor impression, but we ask that you go beyond that, those initial feelings, and take into consideration, this time with impression, the current status of what music education is. We were hoping we'd be further along and out of the pandemic, but we're still dealing with loss of students, quarantines, rotating schedules, and loss of class time. So we're not asking you to lower your expectations, but be considerate of that as you're listening. Once you go from the impression, of course, is the analysis portion. And there you want to show the relationship or degree of what that performance does to maximize their potential. You want to look into all points considering the circumstances as well as the details of that category. Give suggestions for improvement. So after you go from the analysis to comparison, you're going to be involved with how do I assign those points, and do my words go across the page and match what I'm making as far as a total point and rating. Use the points, don't set your points. So suggestions for improvement, that's at the bottom here at the screen. That's where to make your 2 best decisions on what advice you can give them, be complimentary and encouraging. You do not need to put your name, as there's no sense that the signature is not needed on this form since it's electronic, but we ask that you just make sure that everything you put in here is related to the comments above, so the sheet is valid. Using the single words like perfect, okay, and listen just isn't acceptable. I ask you to go a little further. And let me show you what I mean by taking you to one of our score sheets. Note accuracy and intonation are often difficult to evaluate because the only help you get in this descriptor is singing pitches as notated. With that, look, there are some occurrences that cause note accuracy. Discern whether it's, and define the cause. Is it really an error in pitch, or is it involved with the entrance, the delay, a misstep with communication or coordination with the accompaniment? Decide why, and that's what you'd put here in the middle on the score sheet. The other aspect with intonation, when you're in vocal ensembles, consider individual, section, and full. Look at those and use those, especially now since you have the virtual time. Make sure that you're covering those aspects of that category. With piano students, consider technique of touch, flexibility. My challenge to you now with the extra time that you have is to make sure that those remarks that you put are not only valid and accurate, but they're detailed and specific to help those students. So make all your comments student-centered. The one aspect of pulse, steadiness, and tempo is always a problem. Where do I put that? If you mark tempo in several categories, that's called a double hit. So under piano interpretation is where tempo lives. But steadiness and other aspects are in different areas. Fluency, flexibility, fingering. Steadiness is up under rhythm. So just be careful that you're not always repeating what you've said above, and that you're actually deciphering what the cause is and how you can help change or improve that student's performance for the next time. Memorization and penalties. We'll go over that in some detail, but I'm going to go back to Holly's performance to show you that. My basic summary, because you've watched the mock auditions, is if you click this first box, you will have to move the rating, 1 division rating lower, if that's the penalty. So right here it says 1 division rating lower. That's for measures, perform measures not numbered, and also for music not provided. That's when you'll have to change from the gold rating, or whatever rating is earned, to the rating below before you save feedback. Okay. Okay, I'm going to release that just by changing. If you click the bottom, because memorization on pianos is state only, no, that's vocal. For a piano solo, you must have memorization for group 1 only. So again, that's where you would move here. All right? Group 1 changes to group 2. If you're a group 1 or group 2 judge and you're looking at a penalty situation, again, we're hoping we don't have them, you would have to click the bottom box. Top box, you change the rating. Bottom box, you only click it and you leave the rating as is, including the total points. Such as a 13.5 is a gold. When I click the bottom box, I do not change the rating as I did with the top box before saving feedback. All right? You may have, as I mentioned earlier, guests inside the video, page turners, parents, directors recording it. You'll see them in a mirror. Other students standing in the video field. You may not get the full ensemble as in the whole screen. You may have music and you may not have music. All of those things, you'll have to do the best of your ability to judge that event and not assign a penalty for any of those situations. I ask that you avoid referring to that inside the suggestions for improvement or in the comment remarks section, because with this virtual platform, there's a benefit. And that benefit is it can be fixed afterwards. We are putting in your Dropbox PDF Judge folder the PDFs assigned to you. And you'll be able to do that by looking at the questions and the information below. So Holly is level 2, but here we would have had questions and answers of what she's performing. Let's pretend she's group 1. She's not done an introduction and she has not shown her music. So what you'll have to do, and you can do this ahead of time, is listen.
Hi, I'm Holly DePrisco from Valparaiso High School, and I will be singing Loveliest of Trees by John Duke.
And Loveliest of Trees is on our group list. So if you go to the vocal manual online, on our website, the real cool part is this can be searched. I'm in the table of contents, and I hit vocal solos, and it goes right to it. Then you can do Control F or other search devices, and if I can spell loveliest, we'll get there. But guess what I can't? So I'm going to put trees, because I can spell that. So I checked, she said loveliest of trees, it would be list number 112. It is not in her video because she's assigned to group 2, but remember we were pretending. But if it's a group 1 level, there is no list number put in the information. We ask that you check the PDF, the online group 1 listing, as well as listen to their introduction. If they reveal the music, if they say the music, you should be able to determine if that is truly satisfying the group 1 required list. All right. A rule of thumb, 2 rules of thumb actually, just kind of reminders. If you find that you're close between 2 ratings, go up, okay? So give a little bit more of a leniency there, a benefit of the doubt. We definitely want to forget or avoid, that 13.5 and the 14 for vocal solos and ensembles, okay? And at the piano sheet, it's a different set of numbers, that 10.5. You basically want to make sure that you're giving the students the best option to be excited about singing as well as being critical but also complimentary. The next rule of thumb is if you're unsure about giving a penalty, don't give it. Now, yes, don't give it. We ask that you let us know at the end of the day for any penalties you have assigned so that we know the reasoning. By clicking that box, there's no way of knowing what has happened on your end. So we don't want you to write that on the form. We want you to let us know through an email at the end of the day. Let's say that they didn't have music, the PDF wasn't in the folder, and that fell on us. Okay, then we can fix that after the fact. Your verbiage and your descriptors and written commentary stays the same. We just take away the penalty and it's automatically fixed for the director and the student. So don't refer to penalty situations or performance situations inside the sheet. Just kind of give the encouragement and the help through the 3 C's as you can. Next, Dropbox. I had mentioned Dropbox and many of you have questions on Dropbox. Dropbox situation is PDFs we have put in your PDF Judge folder. You'll see that listed here. Those with a T at the end of them are for the mock trials. The rest of these should be in relationship to the video. So on the video and below the screen, you'll see these media ID code numbers. This one was Trent's. Okay, so you'll see that T there with Trent's. Trent was part of the mock auditions, and there's his music. Okay, so avoid and ignore the T's for Saturday. They were used for the mock auditions. Avoid instrumental, mallet, percussion, and all those that were in there because that was a shared folder. But look for the corresponding media ID code number before you preview the video so that you can use the music as a reference. As we discovered with the fall assessments, there's some issues using Firefox. Chrome and Safari is the browser of choice. We also ask that you look at the videos all the way through, that you don't pause them. The benefit is you can do that. You can go back and critically listen and make sure you heard what you've heard, but the first time through, listen all the way through like a live performance. It'll give you that best overall impression before you start to do your analysis. When you're finished your commentary, make sure that you have clicked Save Feedback and that every category has a point and that all categories are equal and even. Not equal, they're equal as far as weight. My recommendation is that you use the back browser, that you always go back to the next event. Unlike the mock auditions, you will not have to log out and put in new username or password. They will all be performance tiles inside your Heart Out events. We call those applications, and they call them live auditions, and your screen will look similar to this. That these performance tiles will all be the vocal solos or vocal ensembles or piano solos that you've been assigned. And remember to click on just the name. If you click on just the name, it will open. Clicking anywhere else in this performance tile will not work, but of course then clicking on the name, whoops, will take you to the video. All right. There is no need to log out, as I mentioned, unless you have multiple events. And what I mean by that is not 175 and 180 or small. But if you go small ensembles 175 and you also have 180, you will see two contests. And those will appear in block contests that you will have to use the back browser for. But most of the judges will only have one event, one contest, vocal solos, piano solos, vocal ensemble. All right? We do expect you to complete the assignment sometime today on Saturday, but it's at your own pace. At the end of the day, email me that you've completed all your assignments and include any media ID codes, penalty infractions, and descriptions along with that email. Remember that the feedback goes live. As I did with several of the points you saw me when I was showing you Holly's audition, if you change a point and resave the feedback, it will correct that. But I ask you to do that, leave it alone and be done, unless there's something you remember that you did in error later on. Right. Now I'm going to ask you to go to your general judge instructions. And this is the part of the briefing where we do a little more detail on the specific events and rules and regulations. All right? So here we go. There are no limitations on how many times a student may perform or may enter. In other words, solos and ensemble may enter more than one as long as the music is different. That is a rule that we've done differently this year since we have that virtual capabilities, and we wanted to offer teachers and students the opportunity to be singing and performing again. So that is a one-year exception to that rule. The vocal solo and ensemble required lists have been changed. I mentioned that, but let's look what I mean. Inside the list here, you'll see many things. You'll see that we've designated advanced literature with the asterisks. You'll see that there is both English and language type labeling, and sometimes it says may be done English or German. There are differences there. You'll see that the event listing numbers are here. That won't be listed, but is not effective. Remember, publishers and these sources are not important. What's important is composer, arranger, and edition. All right? In compliance with the gender neutral policy, we've made those event changes. 160 all solos, 150 piano, and we've simplified ensembles to be small 175, 180 large, and 185 madrigal. So everyone's grouped together, so those voicings will matter. All group levels the students are expected to perform in the group level they've entered, with one exception. That would be group 1. If there's any situation where the group 1, the literature doesn't match, it's not on the list, they're not singing the correct language, or they're singing in a key that's different than the PDF submitted, you do give a penalty, but you don't change the rating. That's one of those situations where you change them from group 1 to group 2, and then just judge accordingly, allowing your feedback to suffice. All right. Other group levels can perform literature of different levels, but the expectation has to be adjusted slightly. They are still required for technique and integrity of the score to cover what they've been given and what they were showing you. But realize where they are in their learning. If they've not chosen group 1, they're telling you their maturity, their experience levels are different than those advanced singers. For piano people, this is more specific for you, look at the addition. There shouldn't be a simplified addition. As they're making cuts, as they're doing ritornellos or things like that, you make sure that the piece satisfies the quality of the literature for the group 1 listing. Smart music and other technological performance accompaniment can be used, but it can't have orchestration, extra background voices, or any of that, only piano and piano recordings. Harpsichord keyboard is also acceptable, as long as it's a keyboard type sound. You're going to be given a judge score inside the PDF folder. If you don't see measure numbers, look again, and then if you don't see the measure numbers, that would be that top box penalty or infraction that you must give them. So we're hoping that all directors help them with that and measure their numbers, or perform measures, but we don't know, and that's something we ask you to check on. Okay, if the score is not provided, that's also in that top box, and that's one penalty, one division rating lower, where you must change the rating. Memorization, I touched on this, only for group 1 piano soloist. So vocal people, if they use folders to sing, both in their ensemble or solos, that's completely allowed. And pianists, for other group levels besides group 1, they're also allowed to use the music. Again, benefit of the virtual platform. Vocal soloist. This is new with our gender neutral policy. It used to be that they had to sing in the original key for arias and recitatives. So erase that from your brain, because this is difficult for even us, we past directors, to get. The key that they hand you, this time in the PDF form, is what they should be performing. So we're not considering transposition at an octave a problem. We're used to that with tenors, using treble clef music and singing down the octave. So if you get a score that's in treble clef and someone's singing an octave lower, fine. Judge it as long as it's in the same key and there's not a problem. And I'm talking group 1, because all other group 2 through 5 levels can transpose at will as far as group solos. If the reverse is true, you get a bass clef score and they're singing up the octave, they could have probably purchased a better score, especially with all the e-print capabilities, but you're not judging that as long as the octave and key have been met in the group 1 level. Again, check the addition, but not publication. If a group 1 solo is not performed in the designated language or key presented, which means inside the PDF, the adjudicator will ask to judge that event in their normal commentary and move it to group 2 event. There's nothing to indicate on this, again, on the electronic score sheet, so that has to be sent to me through email. Ensembles. Simplification of the membered listing. You're going to have kids that have fallen out of the ensembles because of snow days or whatever reasons. As long as they have all parts covered, judge the event as normal. If they have missing parts, that's for comment only. And let me go to comment only back on that screen. Comment only is at the bottom of the drop-down and can be chosen for every category, and must be chosen for every category. Because as I do that, watch the total points. It lowers the point value. if you miss a single category, they're going to end up with a score. So the ultimate goal here would be to have a 0 marked there, and you must manually hit participation. That 0 does not key in a participation rating, but we want them to make sure that they have at least received that rating. So again, with any comment only, you would have to do each category, hit participation, and then save feedback. Back to ensembles. No ensemble may perform in unison only. That would be comment only situation. Group 4 and 5 ensembles must perform with a minimum of 2 parts for at least half the composition. That means obligatos, descants that are added, divisi parts written in count. Kind of rule of thumb is look at the amount of sung measures, not accompaniment, not introduction. Look at the performed sung measures, and if they're about 50%, let it go by. Groups 3 and 2 must perform a minimum of 3 parts for at least half the composition. I'm going to show you the madrigal list that's online as well. With our new gender neutrality situation, we have listed voicings in these categories. And madrigals now have SSA, TTB, and SATB. So rather than referring to male or female singers, you look at the arrangement. So if you're wanting to sing a piece and it doesn't have the SSA or TTB as a director, then they must sing the SATB. In other words, if you're handed, "Oh, the Good Life Gives Me Pleasure," and it's in SSAA and TTBB, that is not satisfied on the Group 1 list. That would not satisfy that literature. But you're seeing that there are others that have multiple. Let's go here to De Lasso's Echo Song. They can hand you the SSA list, or arrangement, or the TTB arrangement, or the SATB arrangement, as long as it's a valid addition and complete score. So this edition is an exciting change for what we have done into the vocal manual, and it happens in barbershop as well with the SATB expansion. So now we have SATB literature for 4-part barbershop. Group 1 vocal ensembles must perform in the voicings indicated in the current vocal Group 1 solo ensemble manual, and all parts must be covered in the octave presented. Group 1 ensembles not satisfying this requirement will be adjudicated as a Group 2 event. Again, it's that bottom box, and you do not change the rating. Non-Group 1 ensembles may have individual performers sing at the octave as long as other parts are being sung by other students. Such as, if they take in a 3-part piece the middle register and they have students singing below the octave, as long as the part that's written at pitch is being sung by other students, that's acceptable. That's for solo and ensemble. So that's a new rule to kind of pay attention to. Basically, when you hear an octave, you have to determine if that's a performance error, and our definition of that for these ensembles, as long as they have other students singing at the octave written, allow it. Going on, 175 ensembles, vocal ensemble, and 180 large ensembles are now in separate lists. If you remember, the old list of 177 and 182 shared some compositions. Now they are listed specifically on our vocal Group 1 ensemble manual. So make sure you check that you're on the right page and the right list for those events. Again, checking the voicing and that's there, as well as language. Small ensembles may perform without direction. If they are directed by an individual anywhere in the room, that is a penalty of 1 division rating lower. Exception: if they have a student within the ensemble cueing, starting, cutting off, that's allowable. For large ensembles, they may be directed by a student director who might be in or might be not in the ensemble, but not an adult or teacher situation. So that is a change, not a change, that is a difference between the small ensemble. The repertoire for madrigals, as I mentioned, has been expanded, and that's new, and barbershop has been expanded as well, but there's also a little tweak in the language for barbershop. The interpretation. Barbershop style and performers are permitted to change the key of the music. They're also for the range and interpretation considerations. If the instance when a part is out of range for an individual performer, specific notes may be altered but must be indicated in the judge's score. So if they're going off of an arrangement that they've heard from one of the BHS quartets, they must notate in the score these edits or changes of things that they're doing for interpretive reasons. When assigning scores, let your comments drive the numbers you put in each category. When you submit a score in the category for every event, the total points, as I mentioned, will appear at the bottom, and it's automatic. But go ahead and check to make sure your rating and your total points align before you hit the submit button. If you find your score is close between those two ratings, which I said, give them the benefit of the doubt. Again, I ask you to use email for any questions you have for me, and after you finish, give all penalty situations or performance details that I may need. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I hope that today and this reminder will get you started and that you're ready and set. Have fun, and again, let me know when you're done.